A hero or an invader? History's greatest military genius, Alexander the Great. Did the young ruler Alexander the Great really want to conquer the world? With his army, he first conquered the Persian kingdom and then Egypt, the land of the pharaohs. If you are wondering what Alexander, who shaped the ancient world with his conquests at a young age, experienced during his short life, let's begin. Macedonia, 356. Before Christ, King Philip. He was a very stern and alcoholic, but also a smart and capable commander. When his older brother, Perdiccas III, died in battle, Philip took the throne during a struggle for power in the kingdom and became king of Macedonia at the age of 46. He conquered all the Greek states except Sparta, making it the largest state in the region. And today, a son was born to him, Alexander, whose name will never be forgotten. In those days, children in Greece were subjected to harsh training from a very young age. King Philip wanted his son Alexander to grow up to be a warrior, but Alexander was both weak and emotional. In fact, the only woman who would shape his life would be his mother. Among the Greeks, his mother was believed to be of noble lineage, and Alexander's childhood hero was also noble. Historical records tell us that he almost never slept a night of his life without reading the epics of the nobility. Educated from a young age under the philosopher Aristotle, Alexander's first great victory was not against huge armies, nor against his opponents in the wrestling ring. Alexander's first victory began with his horse Bucephalus. Bucephalus was black, big, uncontrollable, and afraid of his own shadow. For this reason, no one wanted to buy him. But Alexander realized the horse's problem. Bucephalus was afraid of his own shadow. Alexander helped him overcome this fear by turning his face towards the sun. This made his father Philip II proud, and won Alexander his greatest friend. Together they would conquer half the known world. In the year 336 BC, something unexpected happened. Philip, king of Macedonia, was assassinated in front of his son at a banquet. It was never revealed who was behind the assassination. Some say it was the work of the Persian Emperor Darius. Others say it was a conspiracy by his wife Olympias, who was angry that Philip had taken a new wife. This question was never answered. That day, Alexander, only 20 years old, unexpectedly ascended the throne of Macedonia. The first thing he did was to eliminate his half-brother, who, according to the custom of the time, was still in his cradle, and anyone else who might be considered heir to the throne. He was now a king, but a king who wanted to go to the unknown, to the end of the world. His first military campaigns were against the rebellious Greek city-states, and after restoring unity, he crossed the Dardanelles into Persian territory with an army of 45,000 men. Now the adventure had begun, and he knew there was no turning back. Visiting the ruins of the city of Troy and the tomb of Azel in Dardanelles, Alexander heard that the regional governor of Persia was nearby with an army of 40,000 men, so he sprang into action and swept the Persian army away. This took the Persians, undoubtedly the greatest power in the ancient world, by surprise. How had a 20-year-old boy dared to do this? Even later, the Persian Emperor Darius wrote a letter to Alexander, telling him that he was a child and sending him toys made of gold. But Darius still could not understand who the man he despised was. On their adventurous journey, many of the generals were friends he had grown up with, well-trained soldiers from Macedonia and Greece. The closest was Hephaestion, who was also his male lover. Alexander marched on, winning one victory after another and taking cities such as Ephesus, Miletus, Halicarnassus, and Side, one by one. Finally, he came to the city of Gordion in the center of Anatolia, today known as Ankara. A legend is told here. According to the legend, there was a knot in the city of Gordion, and only the man who would rule the world could untie it. They brought it before Alexander. Alexander first examines it and then cuts the knot by drawing his sword. As he marched on, conquering Anatolian cities, he received news that a large Persian army was approaching near Antioch. Emperor Darius had brought his family with him to show his victory. There were only 45,000 Greek soldiers against the Persian army of 120,000. The most important units in the Greek army were the infantry, called phalanxes, which carried 6-meter spears. The two armies faced each other, and again, thanks to Alexander's successful tactics, the Persian army was crushed. Emperor Darius fled the battlefield. Alexander was furious because, in his opinion, no matter what happened, a king should never be a coward and run away from the battlefield, especially leaving his family behind. This was one of the characteristics of Alexander the Great. Instead of leading battles from behind the front, he always fought at the front, even though he was wounded many times, and once even had his helmet shattered by an axe. Darius' mother and wife were now in Alexander's hands, and he ordered them to be treated as before. In fact, Darius' mother liked Alexander so much that after a while she became responsible for Alexander's meals. After this victory, Alexander continued his march through the coastal cities of the Middle East, winning many major battles along the way. His troops, who had come from the fresh climate of Greece, followed him across the desert heat. They even entered the ancient city of Petra. A statue of Alexander still stands there today. And then it was Egypt's turn. Alexander easily conquered Egypt and was welcomed with great love by the people. At that time, Egyptian and Greek cultures were very close to each other. The Egyptians welcomed Alexander as their savior, as they considered the Persians as invaders. They even proclaimed him the Pharaoh of Egypt. In the hieroglyphs, you can see him depicted in Pharaoh's clothes and beard. Alexander founded the city of Alexandria, which would be named after him, in one of the most beautiful places in Egypt, and built a great library and the lighthouse of Alexandria, which is considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. However, something strange happened at that time. It is said that he was on a spiritual quest. According to some accounts, Alexander embarked on a personal journey. Exhausted from the heat and thirst, he reaches the temple of Amun in Siwa, near Libya, and goes inside and visits it. No one knows what happened inside, only that when Alexander came out of the temple, he was declared a demigod by the priests as the son of Zeus. After a short stay in Egypt, he again pursues Darius with his army. Darius had once again assembled an army larger than his entire empire, and this time he had no intention of taking any chances. According to Persian and Greek records, this army numbered between 200 and 300,000 soldiers. Alexander had about 50,000 men. When the two armies faced each other, the Persians were outnumbered and had the territorial advantage. But Alexander did something interesting. He used an unusual tactic of lining his army up diagonally, and soon the huge Persian army was plundered. As Darius was about to flee, Alexander threw his spear, but it missed, and he could not catch up with him. The Persian king flees the battlefield again. Alexander enters Babylon, the Persian capital. When they entered the city, they were so surprised by what they saw that even the Greek generals were afraid that such wealth and order would make them complacent. It is known that the gold that came after this victory was equivalent to $60 billion today, and that he shared most of it with his soldiers. Soon, Alexander set off again, and twice crossed the icy and steep Hindu Kush mountains, one of the most formidable mountains in the world. Meanwhile, he received news that Darius, who was on the run, had been killed by his own close men. Waiting to be rewarded, the men were executed, and Alexander paid his respects by having Darius buried in the Valley of the Kings, according to Persian tradition. Meanwhile, as the army marches through the mountains, Alexander's beloved horse Bukphalos is stolen by mobs. Alexander was so upset that he immediately sent a message to all sides. "If you don't bring me my horse, I will burn all the settlements here." The thieves, frightened by this message, Bring the horse back, and Alexander cannot hold back his tears of joy. Even when the thieves were waiting to be punished, they were rewarded with gold coins. It was also here that he married Princess Roxana, the daughter of a mountain chief. Although some sources say that the marriage caused fights at first, it is known that the couple grew to love each other over time. This marriage upset Alexander's male lover Hephaestion the most, but of course they never cut each other out of their lives. Central Asia was next. The Central Asian campaign is recorded as one of Alexander's most difficult campaigns. The nomadic peoples of Asia put up fierce resistance. In many places they even achieved success. But Alexander was good at deploying his army in different environments, and he understood that the most important skill of the Central Asian warriors was their horse archers who could shoot long distances. Using similar tactics, Alexander won victories in Central Asia, capturing many major cities, including Samarkand. Alexander's army consisted not only of warriors, but also of engineers, artists, architects, colonists, and thousands of artisans. He took his culture and philosophy with him wherever he conquered. And instead of changing the leaders of the countries he conquered, he cleverly made these people the rulers of their own lands. He never interfered with their form of government, their religion, or their culture. Next is the Indian campaign. India was a large country with several kingdoms, and the most powerful of these kings was Alexander's rival. Although Alexander won the war in a short time, the death of his horse Bukphalos during the battle wore him down. He even built a city called Bukphalya, where he buried his horse, but they didn't stop. They marched all the way into India. They encountered sorcerers in ways they had never seen, tribes with strange cultures and many animals they called monsters. They traveled across deserts, forests, mountains, icy plains, hunger and thirst, death and suffering. Alexander treated Indian tribes, Persian soldiers and Greeks as equals and gave them the same rights. He even allowed them to greet him according to their own culture and did not hesitate to dress like them among them. This had repeatedly soured relations with his friends. Realizing that his soldiers did not want to go any further, Alexander returned to Babylon to plan the conquest of Africa. Until this day, he had never acted at the request of anyone other than his soldiers. Meanwhile, his lover Hephaestion died. Alexander was so sad that he declared 2 years of mourning. He did not leave her body for days. He barely recovered with the help of his wife and friends. And this great leader, who changed the world forever, died of malaria at the age of 33. He was not a hero in appearance, nor was his death a heroic death. He did not die by the stroke of a sword, but who could do what he could do? In a short period of 13 years, he marched 33,000 kilometers with his soldiers, won countless battles, and became the first great conqueror of history. It is rumored that when he was dying, he said to his friends who asked him to whom he was leaving the empire, "To the strongest of you," and breathed his last before he finished. Alexander the Great not only conquered territory, but also changed the cultural future of humanity forever, establishing the Hellenistic understanding and laying the foundation for the Roman Empire and the future Europe. You can understand this better if you read the many articles and books written about the world after Alexander. For the Indians, he became a mythological hero. For the Central Asians, he was a leader that even Genghis Khan would mention his name and look up to. And for the Egyptians, he was worshipped for centuries as a pagan god. In his lifetime, from the south of Africa to the north of Asia, there was no one who had not heard of him, and in the mythologies of all societies, he took his place in history as a hero who achieved the impossible. The mother of the Persian Emperor Darius, whom he defeated, died of an illness caused by her grief at Alexander's death. When Alexander died in Babylon, as he was also the pharaoh of Egypt, his body was mummified and brought to Alexandria in Egypt, where it was placed in a special sarcophagus. For centuries, kings came to visit him. Even when the great Roman Emperor Augustus came to Egypt and asked to see Alexander's body, he was told that he could see the bodies of other kings. He said, "I want to see the king, not a bunch of dead people." Alexander left a philosophy, the philosophy of wanting to be the greatest. He had a dream of a world united under one roof. It is a dream that will perhaps never come true, but this dream was and will be remembered with him. This is what will always come to mind when we think of Alexander the Great. If you liked the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.